So, after this extraordinary panel, my closing remarks are quite easy, because I agree with you, and thank you very much indeed. But Robert told me that there's no free lunch, and you will have to wait a few minutes before getting to it. But I promise it will be short because it's a light lunch. So, the question that you're going to be asking yourself when you return to your home is, was this a successful forum? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask ourselves. And to answer that question, you have to have a framework, and we heard that over the last day and a half, that to have data to deal with policy, you have to have a framework. And the framework is why this forum exists in the first place. And for those of you that were not there last year and the previous year, this forum was set up in 2013 by the Statistics Department of the IMF under the leadership of Min Zhu. And the idea was quite simple. It was to bring together three communities: producer of statistics, policymaker, and academics. And in that respect, I think we have a success because we have the three communities present in this forum. But then, the second question is, well, that's nice. We had interesting presentation, we had interesting debates, but did we learn anything? And I would argue that, yes, indeed, we learned a few things, and I think the panel has brushed a broad view of some of the issues that were discussed over the day and a half that we had. Let me add a few things to what was said, and I would put them in two categories. Discussion that occurred over the day and a half can be classified in long-term trend and seed idea or seed events. And I will not try to repeat what the panel had expressed so eloquently. But on the longer trend, it's clear that over our day and a half, we had a lot of conversation on the fact that interconnectedness and spillover is something that has been growing and taking more importance, and therefore not only policymakers are asking more questions, but data producers are trying very hard to make data available. We heard over and over that big data has been evolving and is with us to stay. We had this taxonomy from Professor Carvalho that we went from survey to admin data to scanner, and then we're on online data. More granular data on the financial sector. I mean, this is something that has repeatedly been discussed, and this is not new, but is a longer trend and a strong trend. The development of tools and framework like whom-to-whom and the BSA are there to stay. The development of the Data Gap Initiative, where we're having now more information on real estate prices, we're having more information on shadow banking, and also on the sectoral accounts. And finally, the measurement of uncertainty, and we talked this morning about uncertainty on commodity prices, and the need to have a better management of revenue and establishment of institution. And this was also in our conversation. But there was much more, let me get you to the other part of the taxonomy that I was proposing, which is the seed ideas. One seed idea that was proposed to us is the macro policy is changing. It's not only about macro stability, but it's also about the SDG, the climate change, inclusive growth. Another seed idea was the use of technology, and that was embedded in the conversation that we had, not only on big data, but also on administrative data. Another seed idea is that we had to add knowledge. We had to add knowledge to all the data that we're collecting in a systematic way, being official or not official. There has to be some intelligence to it. And this can be presented in various formats: correlation analysis, distribution, causal analysis. Another idea was the development of new frameworks to address those issues. We had a presentation yesterday about the network theory, and that fits very nicely with the amount of unstructured data that we're facing. Finally, there was the idea that financial stability does not only depend on the health of the financial sector, but it also depends on the health of household and the health of the planet. So the challenge for statistician and policymaker is to adapt to the new world. And we have numerous good presentations during the last 2 days about how we can use data differently, how we can think about data differently, and how we can interact with data differently. Now, I would like to come back, and it's interesting that the panel made the complete loop from the beginning of this conversation. And I know it was not by design, but if you come back to the presentation of Professor Issing, he brought us basic principles to launch this conference, and we came back to those principles. And let me quote him. He said, "Good theory and good data spell good policy." And that's what the panel just told us. He said also that statistics must be trustworthy, informative, and available. Well, that's exactly what the panel told us. And he also told us that we have to pay attention to burden to respondent. And we have to think about those issues in terms of cost-benefit. And we talked a lot about the cost, but we also have examples during the last 2 days of benefit. Think of the whom-to-whom presentation from the ECB. He also told us that strengthening the statistical capacity is good for policy advice. Some of you said more money for data, it would be excellent. And finally, he reminded us, when we have all those principles set up, that we have to think of communicating to our respondent, communicating to our user, and communicating to our partner, and telling them the limitation of the data. Well, Walter told us about the warning on the bottle of medication. So I think that the conference in that respect is really a great success, because we started with basic principles, we went into very complex problems and issues, and we discussed them, and we came back to those principles. There's a lot of things that we still don't know, and I'm not going to go through this because this is going to be the theme of the next conference. I think that the last argument to pretend and to claim that this forum was a success is that we had quality, extraordinary quality of speaker, of debate and discussion. Your participation as representative of either statistical producer or policymaker or academia. But most importantly, I think this would not have happened without the tremendous and terrific work of 2 teams, Robert's team and Claudia's team, working across the ocean, working across time zone, and making this a real success. And we cannot forget either the invisible team that has been dealing with all the logistics of this room without even a hiccup. I'm talking about the technical team for the sound, the image, the photograph, and I think they deserve a standing ovation. Now that you're all standing, it's time to me to say goodbye. Thank you for coming. Have a safe trip home, and see you next year in Washington. Thank you.